And so I feel, again, just such deep honor to be able to introduce our two panelists. And I'm going to introduce our first panelist, presenter, and leader, and that is Marilyn Scott. Chairman Marilyn Scott is a North Sound ACH board member, the chair of the Tribal Alignment Committee, and a recently elected chairman of the Upper Skagit Tribe. I'm sure that Marilyn needs no introduction in this space, but Marilyn and I had an opportunity to meet last Friday for the first time, and I was able to hear a bit more about Marilyn's work and to be reminded that on tomorrow, on Thursday, we will actually see a film about the incredible work that Marilyn's done. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, Marilyn. And we talked on Friday a bit about not only sharing a little bit about connections to North Sound ACH, but there was this really beautiful intersection in our conversation about the 7-generation approach and, how the work that we're doing now, the work through future generations, leveraging foundations, practices, knowledge, wisdom from our ancestors. And so I wonder, Marilyn, if you could take a little bit of time and introduce yourself, certainly to the level that you would like, and then talk a little bit more about how we leverage the legacies and the wisdom of our ancestors in moving forward in our work. All right. And as we wait for Marilyn to make her appearance on screen, there you are. Hello, Marilyn. Good morning. Thank you for being with us today.
Just trying to adjust with the camera. Sorry.
Oh, gosh, no worries.
Okay, are we ready to start my part of the program today?
Yes, ready.
All right. Thank you so much. My name is Marilyn Scott, and my family given name is Witchalitza, and I am a member of the Upper Skagit Tribe, and I have served on the North Sound ACH since the formation of the ACH when we had the Whatcom Waha group organizing the ACH, and I represent one of the 8 tribes that is within our region, and the importance of understanding the sovereignty of the tribal nations is, and each of the tribes having their own representatives in different from the sectors that were called out when the ACH were formed, is that tribes were not part of the original state formation of the regional ACHs. The sectors were called out in the legislation, but the tribes were not included. But the tribes in the North Sound region, we have been a part of the work with the state for many years. And so we learned about the beginning work of the North Sound ACH and the formation. And 2 of us representatives from the Upper Skagit Tribe and from the Swinomish Tribe, we came to the meeting and introduced ourselves and just sort of made an appearance and expressed interest in participating in the activity of the North Sound ACH and the work, the importance of having tribes at the table. And so I share that just as a background of activity that the tribes have been with the North Sound ACH, and some of the project work that the ACH has had prioritized really made a difference for the 8 tribes of our region. And it was important that we share with the rest of our partners the work that was important for the tribes to be a part of the larger public health priorities within our region. And one of those priorities at the time was the establishment of the dental health aid therapist program. And it was a new concept that was coming about nationally within the Indian healthcare delivery system. And there was the not having the licensing established in the state for dental health therapists, dental health aid therapists working within our tribal communities. So it took some work for the tribes to actually go to the legislature and also nationally work with the Congress to get the dental health aid therapist training program, provider program included in the medical and health providers that were beneficial for healthcare programs. So I just share that as a little bit of background for the work that the tribes have done with the North Sound ACH. And the next workforce issue that we have had the involvement with the North Sound ACH, and it has been there has been support and funding for the tribes made available by the ACH is the behavioral health aids program. And so we've just started the behavioral health aid training with Northwest Indian College and the Heritage University on the east side of the state. 2-year training program that is being the first group of students that is beginning that training program and will be working within our tribal communities as a natural helper connector for behavioral health in the tribal communities around the state. And so I just I have worked, I've served my tribe for more than 35 years as an elected official. And currently we've just had our elections in June, tribal elections in June, and I am the chairman for the Upper Skagit Tribe. And so the tribal government establishes the elected officials annually, and I have been the tribal chairman previously, but I took a break from being on the executive committee of the tribal government, and now we'll be hoping to finish out my career because I'm moving towards retirement. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing now is finishing up many projects that I have established as a goal for my career. And I participate on many state and federal work groups and task forces that are beneficial with for the tribes and the federal agencies and the state agencies that are working on healthcare. So I've been very much experienced in the policy level work that the state is doing, the Medicaid transformation waiver renewal, a part of the development of the original waiver. A lot of the work that the tribes have done is beneficial for the tribal health programs with the federal CMS and the approval of those waivers and the way of business here in Washington State. And so one of the things that I just wanted to share is that, and it goes along with the convening that we're participating in yesterday and now today, is that, you know, the investment of time that all of our partners have made. And the idea of the convening has been thinking about what we want to do and how do we prioritize what work we will be doing in the future. And one of the models that the tribes have utilized is what we call the 7 generation model. And what that model includes is that the tribes have looked at our past generation of ancestors and the work that they have, the foundation that they have put down before and prioritize the development and the economic drivers that will benefit the tribe and the tribal community, as well as our local neighboring citizens. Because the tribes, in working with the North Sound ACH and many other work groups that I participate in, we have tribal representatives that participate in those work groups, along with the communities that will be impacted by the decisions made by those work groups. But specifically with our 7 generation model, the tribal representatives, we look at the foundational and the teachings and the traditions of our ancestors. And right now, I'm in the space now where we are working on the foundational information, but for right now, in the space that I am now participating in, the work that we're doing today. But in addition to that, I am also providing information to our next generation. And so we bring in our young adult and youth population, and we share information about the tribe itself and about the tribal government. But also we have a youth council that is a model similar to our tribal government elected council, that bring youth issues to the tribal government that they feel are priorities. So it's a way of including the young adults that are our future generation into the conversation of what the priorities of the tribal government and the tribe is doing now, and how we can consider and impact our future generation with the work that we're doing now. Including our young adult population in some of the work that we're investing in now for development into the future. With some of the economic development of the tribe itself, we actually share and include and allow the young adult population of our tribe to provide opinions and input on how they feel some of the decisions we're making now that are what we believe beneficial for the future generation. And we hear from them what type of economic development do they feel might be beneficial for the future generation. So that's kind of the 7 generation model that we use. We take the foundational teachings and traditions from our ancestors, and then we use those in the work that we're doing today. And we also include our next generation and our young adult population with the tribe in the future generation. So that's how the 7 generation model works for the tribes. And one of the other things that we have, and we have shared this with the North Sound ACH, with the board when we've had retreats before, but we have the medicine wheel model that is also a very important model that we have shared with our neighboring population, is that the importance of thinking about the whole person. Uh, we're not only helping our citizens and looking at the benefits of healthcare and in increasing the access of healthcare for our population, uh, for only medical, uh, but we're looking at the whole person, looking at the spiritual involvement for a person, looking at the the environment around us and the impact it has on our individual health, as well as looking at the being, the physical being, as well as the spiritual uh, uh, portion of ourselves, the whole person. Uh, if we don't look at the whole person in a way of, we're leaving something out when we're doing the work that we're doing. Um, and if we don't think about the impact of how we met in our healthcare arena, if we don't think about the impact of our health by the environment around us, the contamination of the water, the last few years with the COVID, and that being something that is airborne, it's just a part of that whole medicine wheel model that we uh, have utilized to look at ways that we can increase and provide for all of our citizens in a way that is looking at the whole person. The importance of public health uh, for all of us is, as we've experienced in the last 2 years, uh, it's just been a hardship on many of us, but at the same time, uh, been able to come together and help each other, uh, providing the needs of those individuals that may need to um, not be isolated, and providing that space for individuals that may not have that space to be isolated, having the capability of sharing the PPE when in some of our partners may not have been able to receive those supplies when needed. And the tribes have been a partner also when the state was limited on getting access to the vaccines when those became available. um, we have other resources to be able to get the vaccine, and so in some cases we help um, provide the vaccine for as an example, the school district personnel, when the state was not able to get the vaccine, to provide that for the teachers and the individuals working in the school districts where our children go to school, um, providing the space and the providers that was able to implement the vaccine program for those individuals that chose that. Um, and even though there was a lot of fear in the beginning of, not knowing a lot about the COVID-19 and how it impacts individuals, uh, we were able to help uh, dispel some of the misinformation that may have been circulating around. I know that many of our young adults in our tribal communities, they were um, they were looking at the social media, spaces, and some of the misinformation that was available on the social media um, technology that many of our young adults use in their everyday life. Uh, we're getting misinformation about what the vaccine would do to individuals, and so we were able to help the general state officials making the decisions. But another example of what happens is with the tribes of Washington. We have 29 tribes in the state of Washington. But when the pandemic first began, before the governor even declared the emergency and the pandemic, and it established the executive order, there was a call to action made by the governor with all the tribal leaders around the state to talk about. This was before decisions were made to close down the schools and the businesses around the state. But the governor had a call to action with the tribal leaders because it would really, some of the decisions that the governor made impacted our sovereign governments and some of the economic development, the impact of those decisions that were made. Although we're sovereign and our communities and our jurisdiction is within the state, it's a decision we also had to make, but we needed the information to make those decisions. And so we had a conversation with the governor and what he was preparing to do. And that gave information for our tribes and tribal leaders to consider the protection of all of the citizens within our jurisdiction as well. And so in following the executive order that the governor made, all of the tribal governments within the state made the decision and established our own executive orders for within our tribal communities. So I share some examples of the benefits of the tribes being at the table with the state.
Yeah, do you want to call my phone?
So thank you so much for allowing me to share some of the work that we have done with the ACH. One of the other things that we did in as the ACH was being formed, one of the things that it was determined was that when subcommittees were being established, we established the Tribal Alignment Committee subcommittee. And it wasn't just the tribal representatives, but we had representatives from the managed care organizations that participated on our subcommittee. We had representatives from the counties. Some of the elected officials from the counties joined the Tribal Alignment Committee and were able to learn more about the Indian healthcare delivery system that we have within our tribal communities in serving the population, not just tribal members, but other natives and other citizens that live within our jurisdiction. When decisions were made to have the closing down and isolation when individuals were positive, providing the provisions to the families, and when there was need for that, participating in the North Sound making available the food boxes. It was just a partnership that we had with the North Sound with the 8 tribes in our region, and it was very beneficial for all of us to work together.
Thank you so much, Marilyn, for sharing not only your wisdom, but your time with us. And I heard a number of things, and I would just like to uplift them. And before we move to our next panelist, I think some of the things that you shared, Marilyn, around the dental health aides and the behavioral health aides are really great examples of ways that when we ground in what community is asking for, and we ensure that resources are allocated to community, that communities actually have the solutions that they need, right? That we don't need to create something outside somewhere and then bring it somewhere else, that we can leverage not only the capacity of individuals, but other resources to build within communities. And I was hearing that a lot yesterday too, that, we can build on not only things that are going well, but we can build our own systems, to be able to serve our community members. And I heard that, this piece around investment, not just being financial, but of time as well. And so I think about all the ways that we can offer and all the things that we can offer towards, an investment in the futures of our communities. And I really heard that we need to be centering communities most impacted. And we need to have those folks at the table, that any tables that don't include people who have experienced the greatest inequities, who have experienced the things that we are trying to mitigate for, will not allow us to do community-centered work, will not allow us to really live our values of doing work from a community-centered and informed space. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up, in addition to this whole person framework that I also think is imperative to leverage. And I think it's imperative to have, tribes and tribal partners at the table. I don't think that there's any way that we can do this work if we are not only not respecting Indigenous sovereignty, but understanding that we really need to ground in Indigenous values and ways of knowing to be able to build work that doesn't just look like the work and the systems that we have today. So just deep appreciation for your time and all of the wisdom that you shared. Looking forward to seeing the film about you and your work on Thursday. And I'm going to now just transition into the next panelist. So Bobby Milstein is going to help us set up the investment exercise. I'm just going to do a quick introduction. There's this beautiful quote that I would love to share from Bobby. It's rethinking the most practical thing let me try again. Rethinking is the most practical thing any of us can do to change the future. It can help us see where we fit in a common system and shifts our own roles as change makers within a dynamic and democratic world. So I'm going to turn it over to Bobby, who's the Director of System Strategy for ReThink Health and the Rippel Foundation, as well as a visiting scientist at the MIT Sloan School of Management, with an educational background that includes cultural anthropology, behavioral science, and social science. Bobby really works with innovators who see themselves and others as shared stewards in a movement for well-being and justice. So Bobby, it's great to see you again. Thank you very much for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
It is such a treat to be with you today. I've actually had a chance to visit with North Sound occasionally over the years, and every visit sort of underscores not only how much your work is evolving, but how deep it goes with so many of you as individuals and organizations and networks and cultures, as we're hearing today. It's remarkable. Your story stands out as a captivating example in a much wider movement, the movement to try to thrive together. And we don't often see or appreciate the scope of that movement, but it's bigger and much more vibrant than I think any of us know. And it's because not everybody gets a chance to see what's happening in spaces like this that you've created. And so I feel like it's a privilege that I've been able to sort of travel with you along the way and to take this next step together. I just want to comment a moment on some of the things that I heard in Marilyn's remarks. It was reminding us that priorities are best shaped with love of people and place in the foreground. That isn't normally how we think about diseases and body parts and population groups and programs and projects that resources might be able to move. But a lot of that can easily be detached from people and place. And we're hearing a very different kind of guidance from Marilyn here today. This is a time of spectacular collapse in the systems that we depend on for our health and well-being. And one of the things that is a kind of silver lining in that immense loss is that more and more people are rising to both rethink and reshape what we most want. And And in that process, more and more, by no means enough, but more and more people are turning, or I guess I should say returning, to ancient traditions of what it means to try to live together and to make commitments to one another. So the guiding wisdom of the 7 generations is, it's enduring truth is with us still, and we would ignore it at our peril. But I also heard in Maryland that the actual hard work it takes to negotiate priorities in the, like right now in the present, to who's in the room and what does it take to, to correct those oversights that leave people out, or direct resources in ways that don't take full advantage of the abundance that we all have. And so I think about the exercise we're going to do today as almost the near edge of that 7 generation shift. We are not in line with some of the deepest values that matter. And we all have a lot of hard work and negotiation to do. And this is kind of like a beginning step to try to get ever clearer. Beginning is not the right word, because it picks up on all the work you're already doing, but it's maybe the next step in the near edge of a much larger pivot. So thank you so much for letting me be with you today. And let me